Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Leon van Berlo. I'm the Technical Director of buildingSMART International. I was asked to present a workflow of different standards and solutions that buildingSMART has and how they connect to each other. I'm very sorry I can't join you in person. Unfortunately, logistically that's not possible at the moment. But I hope I can inspire you to try to work out this workflow yourself as well. Maybe even in an in-person event later in the year. So to dive in, we have a lot of these different abbreviations and standards and services, and what we're trying to focus on today are these. So the IDS, Information Delivery Specification, IFC, Industry Foundation Classes, and the BSDD, the buildingSMART Data Dictionary. We're also touching a little bit on the validation service, the open CDE standards for communicating between different tools, interfacing, and the BIM collaboration format, but the main focus is on IDS, IFC, and BSDD. And the way they interact is in this workflow. So what we're going to see today is a definition of the requirements. What do I need to have? How do I expect to get the information? Then there's the step of creating the IFC data. Next is a check. Do I have the correct IFC data in the way that was originally defined in those requirements? And then we can communicate and share the results. So mapping that to the buildingSMART solutions and standards, we have the Information Delivery Specification, XML definition, computer interpretable, machine readable initiative to define requirements. In this demo, we're going to use the Molio House IFC, which is already available. This comes from Archicad, is IFC 2x3, and exported according to the coordination view version 2 MVD. Then we're going to check that IFC file against the requirements. I'm going to use bimworks, which is a very technical IFC, IDS and BCF tool, supporting tool, so full openBIM workflow tool. An online CDE where we can do that, and then the results can be communicated through BCF. What we're also going to do is adding this additional point of validation. I'm going to lightly touch on this to show the validation service, which is in beta currently on validate.buildingsmart.org. You can try that yourself as well. But this will be just briefly touching on it. And when we have this flow, we're also going to bring in the buildingSMART Data Dictionary as a reference library. So when we do the validation, this validation service also checks information consistency. Is the information consistently structured according to how the standards have published their standard in the BSDD? Inside the IFC file, we will see that some classifications and properties have a link to the buildingSMART Data Dictionary library as a reference. We will see that as well, how that works. And what we won't see in this video, in this presentation, is how the reference library BSDD can be used to create information delivery specifications. But that's also one of the ways that the BSDD can work. So let's start off with IDS, the Information Delivery Specification. This is an XML-based definition. So if you define what you need according to this structure, you get an XML file, which is quite technical. But the reason why we set up this initiative was to be able to define in a computer interpretable way what do you need. So for example, all spaces must have a gross floor area quantity. All waiting spaces must have a property about accessibility. So there's a couple of those examples. So again, when you create those in this flow, you can create an information delivery specification of what you need and what objects, what kind of properties or classification references or materials objects need to have. Then the IFC data is created, and you can check if it's valid. A more advanced workflow is shown here, where the client creates an IDS. The IDS is sent to the modeler. The modeler creates the model, can validate against IDS as well before exporting to IFC. Then an export to IFC can be sent back to the client, and the client can also validate the data against IFC. Also here in this flow you see that the BSDD can be used for data enrichment. We see BCF as well. So this is just a more advanced picture. So model authors receive an IDS file and can ensure all the required information is provided for each specification, and model recipients can check the IFC against the IDS. There's a lot of different IDS editors already available. There's even more IDS checkers available. We stopped tracking the list of those because it's so big. For the demo today I'm going to use bimworks, which is available at bim.works. This is a full openBIM a CDE focused really on the technology. So let's dive into that. We'll switch screens and switch to another video. So this is the IDS file again, the requirements file for the IFC. This is the XML version, so the technical view. But we also have a tool created by Blender BIM where you can just load that file into this viewer, and then it shows you a human readable form of that machine interpretable XML. So you see there's 4 requirements: spaces, waiting spaces, CCS properties on walls and windows. So we can just scroll through them and kind of try to humanly read them. As you see, IDS also has these fields where you can add human readable instructions. I didn't do that in this example, but that is also possible. So as you can see, for Windows, for example, these requirements apply to all windows, and the requirements are is external data shall be provided in a certain pset, CCI type data in a different pset. A nice one is the waiting spaces, I think, because this applies to all spaces with a certain classification, and for those spaces the property handicapped accessible needs to be in a certain pset. So IDS is quite rich in a way that it can be very flexible on what you can require. As you see here as well, base quantities and the user-defined property sets are required for spaces. So it's quite a rich way of expressing requirements, very much focused on what the current practice is, focused on IFC, of course. So when we take these 4 requirements and we put them in a certain viewer, so in this case we have the Molio House here. I'm using this bimworks viewer purely because it's a very technical view. I like that, of course. Gives me a very good overview of what's actually in the IFC file without software interpretation. So I always prefer this tool. It has a lot of functionalities on BSDD and IDS as well. So let's look into that. So when we have the definitions here, it has the Molio file as well. So as you see here, this is the same IDS that we had before. So let's have a look to the Molio one and see what we have here. This is a bit of an adopted, changed version from the normal one, and the way you can see that is, let me give you a search with only spaces. Show only, walls. Show only walls. So for example, when I select this wall, as you see, this is a very technical view. It shows all of the data, all of the properties, including also the classes here. So this is classification reference. And as you see here, it has the CCS classification in there. And it also has this URI, the unique resource identifier. This was added to the public Molio file just to show how BSDD can be used as a reference. So when I now click here and say show me the B is the D info, it makes a connection to the buildingSMART data dictionary, and it comes up with, okay, this R1 classification, that's actually a construction wall, and the description of that is it's an assembly system forming virtual separation. Related IFC entities are these. So what you expect, this is published in the buildingSMART data dictionary. What you expect is that this classification reference is linked to these kind of objects, which it is, as we saw. This is an IFC wall. And what's also listed in the buildingSMART data dictionary is that typically this kind of classification reference, these kind of further specialization of a wall has these properties. And these are IFC properties again, as you see. So within the buildingSMART data dictionary, you can publish a classification, a class, and refer to properties from other domains as well. That obviously increases interoperability. Further information as well here, like status, dates when it's published, and parent classes, etc. There's also different translations if they are available inside the buildingSMART data dictionary for people to be able to read this. So these URIs work in a very nice way, and this is also what we expect that people are going to be adding to IFC when they use the data dictionary. I think this is also a direct link, so as you can see, it's also directly available also when tools are not supporting it inside their tool, like this one does. So this is this reference to the data dictionary. As you see, it can be very helpful. But let's get back to our original view. So our original view of the checks. So we have this IFC file now. It has the references to the buildingSMART data dictionary in there. And let's do the next step where we are going to do the model check. And in this case, we obviously do the Molio check. And as you see, there are some errors, 126 errors, 305 valid objects. When we click further into this, we can see that all of the CCI properties on walls are correct. 189 are all valid. The correct properties that we require there are all there. When I click on this, it zooms in and you can further evaluate it. But for spaces, most of the spaces are also fully compliant. It does have all of the properties that we require, but there is one space that doesn't. I am really curious if that was actually known from this file, so we can zoom into that as well. As you see, it's a very more technical tool. I have some difficulties with viewing, please forgive me, but the essence of this is that the property CCI administrative multi-level ID is missing here, and it is on all of the other spaces. So we hope that's, I actually do hope that that is a surprise, because it would show the power of IDS. Other requirements, so all of the windows are missing something. In this case, the PSET wall common fire exit is missing. That's probably for all of the windows the case. Yeah, but it does have all of the other properties. So there's also obviously different ways of viewing this. You can also just give all of the errors per property instead of per check, but that's obviously on the software vendors to present this. So the next step here would be exporting this to BCF. And in this case, this tool, bimworks, also has a nice download as BCF option, where it provides the results of the checks in the BCF. Another option, which this tool does not support yet, is to share the BCF topic through the BCF API, which is, as many of you would know, part of a OpenCDE groups of APIs, which would accelerate the process even further. But I think this is already a nice overview on the combination between IFC, using the buildingSMART data dictionary as a reference and having the information delivery specification in different formats. So the formal XML, but also the human readable interpretation of that. So again, this is just a viewer that shows the XML data in a more human readable way, but it's the same data. And having that as results from checks in the tool that implemented it. So coming back to the slides, what we've seen was the IDS, IFC, and IDS check in bimworks, and a little bit about that it's possible to also export to BCF. What I want to dive into a little bit closer is the BSDD and the validation service. And maybe to just highlight a couple of things on the BSDD, because we really just saw how it works in bimworks and how information can be gathered, and what we also saw was how the references to the BSDD are stored in IFC. But maybe a step back, something a little bit more high level. The BSDD, the buildingSMART data dictionary, is actually a service. It runs on bsdd.buildingsmart.org. It's an API first service, and it's used to publish standards. This can be product data templates, can be national standards, industry standards, project or company specific standards, and they can be verified or unverified. It's possible to link between objects, and it's also possible to access that data through multiple different interfaces. So when we look again at, for example, this wall construction that we saw earlier in the demo, when I search this, there's two popping up within the CCI publication, and looking at that wall construction that we saw earlier in the bimworks demo, you see there's a lot of information inside the BSDD about this. This data is verified, so it gets this verified status. So it means that this is much more stable and mature data than some of the others. And you can also use this on searching and filtering to make sure that you only use verified data. In this case, it says that this is published according to a certain license. There's a verification report, more information, the quality assurance processes, owner, etc., etc. In this case, it also says that this class, this specific LAD code, is expected to be linked to an IFC wall standard case, wall element case, pile and or curtain wall. It has synonyms, it has a description, and it also has properties that are coming from other domains. So in this case, Molio has said, hey, this LAD code, this wall construction, we tend to see, we expect to see these kind of properties linked to it. So these are not Molio properties, these are properties from IFC that are published inside the data dictionary and are owned by IFC, but are linked to this class. And the ability to do this, to link to IFC entities, to link other properties, because I can also imagine you have this CCS administrative property set published in the data dictionary and link those, publish those and connect those to this object as well. All of that is possible, but you can also mix and match between different standards and different domains. And I don't have enough time to dive into that very deeply, but when you look at bsdd.buildingsmart.org, you would find links to all of these videos. The full story is there as well, including a SketchUp use case, which is also a separate link here. So if you want to screenshot this, go ahead. And there's a very nice eTIM use case of using ACA software as well. This is about producing IFC data with the BSDD in a very effective way. We skipped that step in this demo from the Molio House earlier because we assumed there was already an IFC file with all of this data inside. But the BSDD is also a tool that can help in a very, very effective way to structure the information in a very specific way. So that was just a little bit more on the buildingSMART data dictionary and its place in the ecosystem. When we go back to this original overview, we see that there's also an arrow between the validation service and the BSDD reference library. And to explain that, I need to explain you the validation service as well. So the buildingSMART validation service is something new. It's in beta. It really doesn't work that well yet, I have to admit, but you can already test it on validate.buildingsmart.org. If you already use another service like the use case management service from buildingSMART, you can use the same login and your same account to log in here as well. And what this does is it provides a judgment on conformity of any given IFC file that you can upload against the IFC specification. So this checks on the IFC schema, but also the informal propositions, the implementers agreements, and a lot of other things. Syntax check is also in there. So this was created on the specific request of the software vendors, our large strategic members, who said there's too much going on blaming software for bad implementations. Sometimes the files are just not good, but in some software they forgive incorrect files a lot more than other tools. So we need to have this neutral platform that can judge, is the file correct or not, and buildingSMART has to make that. So that's why we started to create this. So feel free to try this. An additional feature next to just checking the against the IFC specification is again that arrow between the BSDD and the validation service. It's the check for information consistency. It checks your IFC data against conformance to the BSDD data. And there's a simple example here where we have some demo data in there where a window has a property is beautiful and the allowed values are true. And then when you check an IFC file in the validation service, you get a report like this. And it says, hey, I found a window with a property value is beautiful false. So that's not consistent to how it's been published in the BSDD. So when we look at, for example, the Molio House, if we look at this wall construction again, this classification reference says that it needs to be linked to an IFC element, an IFC entity object that is either an IFC wall standard case, element case, pile, curtain wall, and it needs to have these properties. So if you now upload the IFC file to the validation service, which unfortunately I don't have time to do that in this presentation, but I highly recommend you to try it yourself. Validate.buildingsmart.org. Beware, this really still is in beta. You can see how the report that we showed earlier will be presented to you, and it would also say that in this case the walls with this classification reference do not have all of these properties. But if it does have these properties, it can also check if the values are correct according to the standard or not. And it gives you some kind of an impression on the information consistency. So this is a different kind of check, information consistency against what has been published in the BSDD, which is a more static publication. But of course, as you saw as well, we also have this IDS check. And in the example that we have now, for example, it checks if spaces have the accessibility property. This is also published in the buildingSMART data dictionary, but it's also defined in the IDS as required for this project in this phase for this transaction. So there's two kinds of checks. One is really against a hard set, this is what I need for my project, the IDS, and a more broader information consistency that says, hey, you've got an object here that is not really consistent according to the standards that is published in this reference library. It doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong for your project, but it does say something against this reference library. So these are two different checks, two different validations. And again, I'm really running out of time now. I invite you to try it yourself. You do have to be quite patient, but I really do encourage you because I really want to have your feedback as well. If you want to try this, you do need to have the Molio IFC file with the URIs. So as you see here, this is the URI reference that we saw earlier as well in the demo. This has to be in the IFC file, so the validation service knows how to query and how to get the information of this object from the BSDD. And those files have been published on our GitHub website. In the GitHub buildingSMART organization, there's a repository called sample test files. You would find the Molio IFC file with the BSDD URIs and the IDS example, and also a couple of the videos to watch back. So thank you very much. I also highly encourage you, if you have any questions, please contact me at this email address. Or even if you want, just give me a call. Just give me a call or WhatsApp messages, send me an email. Please don't hesitate. If you have specific questions about the validation service, I would say use validate@buildingsmart.org. If you have specific questions about the BSDD, we also have BSDD support at buildingsmart.org. But please don't hesitate to also just email or call me directly. Very eager to help, very eager to also hear your feedback on all of this. And again, there's a lot more. There's also more to say about the OpenCDE APIs. There's a lot more to say about a lot of different initiatives that are going on as well, like the use case management service that also definitely has a place here. But I'm really running out of time now, so thank you very much for your attention. I'm really hoping to follow up with you offline or online. Thank you very much.